Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents. I'm Mr. Pelican. I'm running for mayor. The first thing we're going to do is bring the RCMP into Abbotsford on the organized ring of criminal activity that was taking place in our city, the threats by the Abbotsford APD, and what Henry Braun was doing with his son and Abbotsford City Council. A few days ago, I did a video on Archway Community Services. Abbotsford residents' response was just overwhelming of how this was taking place. They asked me, how come the former mayors and everybody didn't know? Well, they weren't in previous to the inner group of Henry Braun and Henry's son. I befriended Henry's son, Darren Braun, who was working in front of his dad and lifting real estate deals, jacking people and everything else. But Henry was using the Abbotsford police to control. Henry Braun went in the Abbotsford City and set up the first business plan, and then him and his partners were going to buy into it. Somebody told me today that they ran into Henry and Ross and they look real sick. Some people think he's got cancer. This is what'll happen when you're stealing and you're frauding Abbotsford taxpayers, and a legit ring like Ed Fast and Mike DeYoung were covering that. When Henry sees there's no way out from this and Abbotsford police can't control what's coming, stress and worries, and you could see them, and that'll alter and change the appearance of every human being. Today I'm down here at the Abbotsford, old part of Abbotsford where the Christmas tree is lit in here. The hub, not far from Ross's gas station. A few days ago I released a video on Archway Community Services that's trying to get the homeless shelters built in Abbotsford. I made it clear that was a set group and an organization and what Archway was doing. Today I want to show you. Darren Braun brought me this. This is Rob Santiago, and this is Andy Sidhu, and this is the city councilors. Rob Santiago and Andy Sidhu are best friends. Andy Sidhu is Dave Sidhu's dad. He's the one that blocked me at UFE, used the Capricha newspaper to block me, and they were trying to load Ross Siemens over Abbotsford voters. Why would you take such a risk? Think of the money. Think of how many millions of dollars. Today I want to give you a story on Rob Santiago himself and what I would do as a mayor. Rob Santiago uses his friends and his groups to penetrate other non-profit organizations. If you could see, this is a new Archway was opened. I encourage you to go and look at all Archway's land being opened here and business it bought on the flood victims. It raised the money, and what it was doing to Abbotsford, nobody put a halt on it. And it's got real estate everywhere. 30 million and maybe more in real estate that it's jacked. And it didn't build homeless shelters. Rob Santiago was building a bigger portfolio. So Rob Santiago does this to other non-profits. We know it's a group, we know it's a ring, and I was inside that ring by Darren Braun to find out what was going on. Rob Santiago gets his people to go around to other boards and other groups and penetrates them and gets them on. Kind of like, imagine the NDP sending spies into the BC Conservatives. That never happens, we know that. We know people like Bruce Banman just say, I'm leaving the Liberals, and they go join the BC Conservatives, they call it out. Rob Santiago sets this up, and then eventually takes over the board and then takes over the non-profit organization. This is what Darren Braun showed me he was doing with a group called Community Taj. So let me tell you, Community Taj is another non-profit organization ran in Abbotsford. Rob Santiago set up his people on that to eventually take over the board, to vote everybody else off, and then he could control that. Once he controlled Community Taj through Archway, guess who became the CEO of Community Taj? Rob Santiago's wife. Now, if you go look on Community Taj's portfolio, they're hiring a cook. What are they hiring a cook for? To cook for the homeless. Why are they cooking for the homeless? Well, then that way they can get that cook to cook for Archway. Archway gets the money from the province, the money feeds them, and they feed Community Taj, and it's just a big old scam going on. As mayor, I'm going to go after Archway. I'm going to close it down. First of all, I'm going to go after it for the tax evasion when Abbotsford residents were. As a non-profit, it made profit. And I'm going to tell Archway Rob Santiago this, and you better listen carefully, because you know I'm coming, and I'm coming stronger and stronger and stronger. residents of Abbotsford are sick of the scamming, they're sick of the homeless being abused, and they're sick and tired of these non-profit organizations pushing on the premiers and everybody else to scam. And just between Rob Santiago and his wife at Community Tash, Rob Santiago makes over $700,000 and they're scamming more. And this is what they were doing to all these non-profits. But they had the coalition of Abbotsford City Councils and the mayor with them. It was a group setting up this non-profit organization to make hundreds of millions of dollars. Then Rob Santiago would when they get the jobs from the province to build shelters, he would kick that to Henry's friend that would build the shelters, and it was just a big everybody was feeding in the pig trough. Rob Santiago's going to go under investigations, first of all, for Community Tash and what Rob Santiago's did with the flood victims and everything else. Rob Santiago has used the non-profit organizations like Archway to hide his organization of the abuse he took forward on the homeless, the stuff he's done to lobby more jobs, the stuff he's done to put other non-profits out of business, and the other non-profits got to pay tax, and he doesn't pay any. When you got a portfolio over $3 to $4 million, and I'm the mayor, you're going to pay taxes, and you're going to pay taxes swiftly. But I'm going to tell you this, Rob Santiago, I want to hear it from Mr. Pelican. How this got caught was Henry Brown got in his car and tried to end my life in broad daylight. Henry Brown used Mike Sear to cover. Henry Brown used the Abbotsford police to threaten. He used them on Mogill. He used the Abbotsford task force at me to block me in the election. Greg Toes, the Chamber of Commerce, who was also the president of the UFB, offered me a bribe. We'll run Ross. We'll help Ross cheat. We'll pay for everything you were out, and in 4 years we'll help you. I'm here about my town. I was great friends of George Ferguson, and I was George Ferguson's neighbor. I'm here about my town, and that's why I'll bring the RCMP in. But I want to make sure that this video is loud and clear for David Eby to see. So the money that's being designated through the city begging, so it goes in Rob Santiago's hand and then out the back door to contractors and gifts, is going to get pulled. And we're going to look at nonprofits that are helping the community, contributed to the community, and they're there for the community, and they're not CEOs like Rob Santiago. If you go through Abbotsford, I encourage you, Archway is building everywhere. They just opened a brand new one down here in the bottom of Abbotsford. They're building everywhere. What are they doing with this money? Let me tell you what they're doing with the money. The money they raised from the flood victims, Darren Brown showed me, that they were paying directors and CEOs like Rob Santiago and people in the office bigger and higher paychecks. And it wasn't going out to the homeless. Community Tash is Rob Santiago's wife sitting on Community Tash is a conflict of interest. It's all inside collaborating and racketeering, but it's stealing off the nonprofit organizations. But they have the mayor and council who are directly tied in his ring, this little inner group, kind of like the Knights of the Round Table, that are doing all this and building their portfolio over Abbotsford residents and even over the homeless. But I want to make sure that this is live front and center to David Eby, the BC Conservatives, and make sure that the federal government sees. But as mayor of Abbotsford, the first thing I'm going to do, so threats are off of me, and I'm not being threatened, I'm not being bribed, I'm not being told by Greg Toes that I can't run in the election and he's going to buy me, and then we'll help me and my friends and Ross Siemens get loaded. I'm going to bring the RCMP in. Why? Why did they do this? They halted this because of these reasons of what Rob Santiago doing, what everyone was doing. There's only so far a human being will go to see the abuse. But these men were using the vulnerable and the weak and the disadvantaged to profit off of. And then these men were doing this. When I learned from Darren Braun that Rob Santiago's wife is running Community Tash, Rob Santiago set up the whole board to eventually vote everybody out, put his board on Community Tash and his people, then get his wife hired there as the CEO. And then you could see it. What was missing in the story? You know what was missing in the story? I'll tell you what was missing in the story. Vicky Hopes, Ken of the Abbotsford newspaper. Henry Brown once told Tyler Olson, you write one thing about me, Tyler Olson, I'll bankrupt you. I'll bankrupt you and put the newspaper on its belly. This is why the newspaper, Vicky Hopes and Ken, did not mention the conflict of interest, the collaborating, voting the board out to grab control of it. We need a total overhaul. Wasn't this coward mayor, Henry Brown, went up the interior to throw that mayor and council out, so he probably couldn't take that over. Maybe I should be arguing that that mayor from the interior needs to come down here and take this over so we can have an investigation. So I'm going to tell you this, Rob Santiago, from Mr. Pelican to Abbotsford First to Ross Siemens. I'm coming. I'm coming for the mayorship, and I'm coming, and the first thing I'm going to do is a forensic audit, like Darren Brown said, connecting all these dots, all these millions of dollars frauded, and the portfolios that were being loaded to contractors like Rob Funka Diverse, that newspaper, Quantum Projects, Marcus Dalvis, and I'm coming after them all. It led to threats. But I'm going to bring the best team there is. I'm going to bring the RCMP in, and a forensic audit will connect the I's and the dots for Abbotsford residents to see. And it'll go after people like Vicky Hopes. It'll go after people like Mike DeYoung. It'll go after Ed Fast. It'll go after Rob Santiago. It'll go after Marcus Dalvis. It'll go after Dave Sadu. It'll go after the Brenda Falks, the Kelly Shahals. It'll go after them all. This was an inner group, all set up and run by Henry Braun. So I'm going to tell you this, Rob Santiago, at the end of my podcast here. A man got in his vehicle because he knew it was going to go on the general stage and the world's social media for the RCMP and investigators and governments to see. He didn't want that to happen because he figured he had it all covered with Vicky Hopes, the Abbotsford police chief, killing all and off he could use for bribing, Gertie Purdy that tried to cover Henry's attempted murder, left the city of Abbotsford, came on a negligence that he was scamming another job next to his land to get lift and moving jobs so he could get it, collaborating with Abbotsford First. Used his Alexis car, stood on the gas, and proceeded to end my life. All it was a few little mistakes that saved me. I landed to the left instead of to the right. Henry fled from the scene. He dumped his Alexis car. Mike Sears covered and cleaned it. That preceded me to go on the world stage and chase what was most vulnerable and what was here, the money. And I knew at the end of the day what Darren Brown's saying was the truth. I'm live, ladies and gentlemen, and I encourage you to go look at Rob Santiago Archway Community Task, his wife's running, then come down here and look at it. But I also encourage David Eby to start pressuring back to the BC Conservatives, the candidates that live here, and say, what's going on? We needed to know this in Victoria. Why is the province being frauded? Why is Archway getting more money when they have millions of dollars in real estate? Why are I looking like a bad person? And why are you not asking the NDP to step in with the RCMP? And why do I have to learn from social media and the candidate that's running for mayorship, the community task director, the CEO is Rob Santiago's wife? I'm live, Abbotsford, British Columbia.